నమస్కారం. డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం విద్యార్థిని విద్యార్థులకు స్వాగతం.
Hello viewers, welcome to this program on reading non-verbal information. This program pertains to the foundation course in English, which is the first year course in the BA degree program. You may have noticed that in this course we have given you practice in reading of different types. 2 blocks of the course talk about reading and reading skills, and the remaining 2 blocks are about writing and writing skills. Before I begin talking to you about reading non-verbal information specifically, let me just go over what we have done in block 1 and a part of block 2. This lesson is actually about unit 8, which is reading non-verbal information. In block 1, you may have noticed that we have told you or given you practice in reading small texts. Initially, we introduced you to reading narratives and anecdotes, because narratives and anecdotes are perhaps the most easy of all texts to read. They are interesting, they engage our attention, and we feel involved in them. Further, the action in them is sequential, that is, one event follows another, and there is a gripping of the reader's attention as we read. You must have enjoyed reading the short stories and anecdotes that we have given you in the first few units. We then spoke to you about locating information, which is another reading skill that engages your attention to specific details or asks you to look for specific information. We could do it in different ways, and we have shown you how information can be located from different types of texts. In the third unit, we have taken you to reading a dictionary, explaining that the dictionary is a rich resource for language learning. Perhaps reading non-verbal information is also like reading a dictionary or a table. I'll go into the details of this a little later. Then we have told you how to read for specific information, reading for general ideas, and finally, in the last unit of block 1, we have told you how to read between the lines, which will be reading things which are not very explicit or put down in clear black and white letters, which means a certain amount of interpretation has to take place there. In the first block, we have covered all these units, and then in the second block we go on to gradually tell you about reading non-verbal information. The first of these units in block 2 is about reading instructions, and we have told you how to go through a manual or a book in which instructions are given, where you must follow the instructions step by step or gradually. Units 8 and 9 move progressively into something which is slightly more difficult, but which you would be doing in many other disciplines such as economics, maybe political science, history, and commerce, because you would be reading tables, charts, maps, graphs, and so on. That is what this lesson is specifically about. Reading non-verbal information. What are non-verbal texts, you may ask? Non-verbal, that very word gives us a clue about the kind of text that I am talking about today. They could be graphs, charts, maps, tables, what are known as pie diagrams, or pictures or graphic representations of any kind. What are the features of such texts? Such texts have fewer words and more pictorial representations, which means there would be more of the image or the picture in them, and there would be fewer words. Why do we need to read non-verbal information, you may ask? Very often we find that textbooks and reference material, even papers, theses, dissertations use tables, graphs, etc. to convey information. They do so because a lot of information can be compressed into a small space, and the reader can be given a clear picture of all the information without the use of a lot of letters, words, and paragraphs. It is necessary for you as a good reader to be able to read such information also. Of course, very often again, the table is accompanied by written text, by a written material, a paragraph or two, which explains the table or the graph. Then again, what you need to do as a good reader is to be able to relate that text to the picture or the graph or the table that has been given. As I said earlier, this graph or picture compresses a lot of information into it, or the writer compresses a lot of information into it. Therefore, it requires a lot of careful reading. Let us look at some of the advantages of using non-verbal information or using pictures, graphs, tables, etc. Pictures and graphs, if we use a non-verbal text, what does a non-verbal text do? It communicates with the maximum of brevity. That means it is very brief. It doesn't need long sentences. It doesn't need paragraphs of explanation. You can look at one picture and you can extract the information that you require from it. The reader gets the information in the minimum amount of time. Sometimes the reader does not require all the information, or the reader does not have time to go through a long paragraph. If he just looks at the picture, he can get the information that is given to him in the pictorial form. Thirdly, specific information can be located very easily. For instance, if I want something which is only one part of the entire detail given in the non-verbal text, I can go straight to it without hunting through lines of sentences in the paragraph. The non-verbal text facilitates analysis, comparison, and contrast of data. As the data is presented clearly in front of me, it will be possible for me to make comparisons between what is given and different types of information that is presented pictorially. Even a less educated reader would be able to get an overall view and get a detailed picture of the information that is being presented. Further, information can be presented very accurately in a graphic or a non-verbal text, because the information has to be presented in tables, graphs, or pictures which compress all the information, and interpretation is in a sense reduced to the minimum. There is no scope for ambiguity, so the data gets transferred unambiguously to the reader. It is of course a pleasure to look at non-verbal information. It lends color to the text or to the book or the report that we are presenting. I have said this before, a lot of data can be easily compressed into a small space, and is readily available for the reader to access as and when he requires. What are the different types of texts that we come across in non-verbal form? Of course, we can start with advertisements. We can say we come across these every day. We see hoardings on the roadside. We see small advertisements. We see maps. We see a location map, for instance. We see a location map which directs us to places. We may have a bar chart, what is called a bar chart, which gives you longitudinal, which gives you lines of information. I'll come to that a little later when I show you some examples. We could have flow charts which show you a process, the movement from one point to another, and shows you a directional movement of some action. We could have pie diagrams. I'll get to that later and explain what pie diagrams are. We could have graphs, we could have tables, and we could also have something called a tree diagram. We'll talk in detail about these a little later. What are the reading skills we need to be able to access non-verbal texts? Yes, you must have guessed this already. You would need to read all the information at a glance first. You would need an overview of all the information that is given. You would need to look at specific details. You would need to make comparisons. You would need words which make comparison. You would need words which make contrasting statements. You would need very careful observation and interpretation or understanding of the table or the text itself. I have said this, you will need to relate words, you will need to connect words which are given to you, because you will need to connect data, you will need to connect information. So also you will need to connect words. You will need to skim and scan. We have mentioned this before. Skimming and scanning are two sub-skills of reading, and you will have to do those, you will have to put those skills to use when you are reading non-verbal information, because you may not need all the data that is given to you in the picture or in the graph. In that case, you will have to pick out only those things which are relevant, which are of use to you, and leave out those which you do not need. You should be able to connect the whole text with the smaller text or the bit which you are going to extract. These are some of the skills which you will bring into play when you are going to read in non-verbal text. Understanding relationships between linguistic devices or linguistic text terms is also one of the skills that you will be putting to use when you read in non-verbal text. Let me take some non-verbal text now and explain to you in detail how we use or read, how we use reading skills to interpret them. Now, let us look at the first table which you have in your course material on page number 131. Here is a colorful representation of the same picture. You will notice that there are 12 bars or long lines which show you the loads being carried by 4 different trucks. The trucks are carrying oil, sugar and wheat. You will see that the third truck is carrying the largest amount of oil. This is easily noticed in a non-verbal text. If you write the same material or the same information in a longish paragraph, locating this information would be a little difficult. But the moment you look at the bar diagram, you can see that the relative loads being carried by the trucks are obviously presented to you in the bar diagram. You can see that almost all of them, all the 4 trucks are carrying the same amount of wheat. The second truck is carrying a little more sugar than the other 3. And the third truck, as I said earlier, is carrying the heaviest or the largest load of oil. Let us look now at another picture. The second picture, which is given to you in your books on page 133. In this picture, which is a kind of a direction map, the map tells you how to progress towards the pond. In reading these texts, you would have to use words which indicate directions. The map says you are here and then gives you an indication that you must progress towards the left. Then take the first right, go further on straight till you cross one turning to your right, and then take a right turn till you reach the pond. Such directional maps, which are put up in colonies in different places, direct people to reach locations. So, location maps are a sort of non-verbal texts. Another kind of text that we come across in our day-to-day life is a pie diagram. In your book, there is a pie diagram which describes the percentage of students in different ranges of marks. You will notice that the pie diagram, which is like a circle, represents the total strength of the class. So, it is 100% would be the total strength of the class, out of which there are divisions which have been made. The circle is divided into parts to indicate how many students fall into which range of marks each. Look carefully at the picture which is there before you. You will see that half the circle, or 50% of the class, denotes students who have secured marks between 80 and 90%. The slice which shows 70 to 80% is just about short of a quarter of the circle. Then you have a quarter of the circle, a slice which denotes quarter of the circle, showing students who have secured 50 to 70% marks. And then there is a slice which shows students who have got 40 to 50% marks. This is one way in which non-verbal texts show us the relative proportions of students or of data in a total sample or a total population. In the next table, which is on page 135, we have been shown the translations of a book in different languages. In fact, this is a kind of exercise which you must have worked on your own while you were reading the course material. You will see that where the original language was English, there were 150 translations of the book made into French. So, you can get at a glance a picture of the number of translations of a particular book into different languages. As I said earlier, we get relative data in a quick and easy manner from such a table. The next diagram, which is a tree diagram, depicts the structures of organizations. Look at this tree diagram. Let me show you another a little while later. This will show you the structure of university. It shows you how the different divisions are divided, how they are constituted, and who reports to whom. It is very useful because instead of writing a number of sentences telling you who is at the top, who reports to whom, and who comes below whom, it is easier to present the whole data in the form of a tree diagram. It is called a tree because it is as if a tree is branching out, as if it is breaking out into a number of branches. Under non-verbal devices or non-verbal information, we could also have maps I referred to a location map earlier. The location map could be more detailed, showing you directions to get to a city, a town, a village, or even directly to your house. We can see different types of maps. You could have a map which shows you how to get over ranges of mountains, how to cross rivers, how to reach a particular plot. Or you could have a small map which shows you how to get to the university. That is what I have here before you now. A simple non-verbal text here before you is the graph. The graph shows you the changes in the number of readers of a national newspaper. You can see how there is a rise and a fall at different occasions or on different occasions at different points of time. The non-verbal text can also get very complicated if we put in a lot of data, a lot of information, such as is given in a figure 8.3.5.2, the table 3, which shows you the sale of computer printers. You can see that this information is extremely detailed and would be useful for someone who wants to make relative comparisons between the rates of different items to be purchased or items of the computer printers. I had spoken to you about bar diagrams. Let us look at another bar chart which presents to you the gender-wise students admitted in different faculties in a college. It is a colorful picture which catches your attention and which shows you the relative admissions in each faculty gender-wise. You can see, for instance, that there are 353 boys as against 257 girls in arts. The comparison can be extended across faculties to the faculties of commerce and science. From this one picture or one bar chart, you can generate as many as 10 to 15 different sentences. You could speak about the difference between the enrollment in sciences, where the number of boys are fewer than the number of girls. You have only 20 boys as against 64 girls in science. You could speak about the larger intake in commerce. There are 162 boys as against 98 girls. And you could speak on the whole about the enrollment in arts as compared to the enrollment in commerce and science. So we can see that with just such a simple diagram, we are able not only to capture a lot of information, we can present the information without writing long sentences. This is what I had told you earlier. You may know that a calendar also is a kind of a non-verbal text. From the calendar, we can glean out information about the days of the week. We can find out which day is going to be we can find out the date on a particular day. For instance, if I want to know when next Thursday, what the date is going to be on next Thursday, I can just find out from the calendar. I can find out what day of the week New Year's Day is going to fall on, or I can find out the day of a particular festival, or I can look for holidays in the calendar. So the calendar is a kind of a non-verbal text which we need to learn how to read, we learn to learn how to look at very carefully in order to observe and extract information. Let me show you also a table which gives you the bus timings for routes which come to the campus or to the Ambedkar Open University campus. Here is a table which shows you the route numbers and tells you the point from which the bus starts, gives you the time when it leaves the point of starting, and tells you when it reaches the campus and departs from the campus. Using such information, it would be possible for students to start from different parts of the city to reach the university and to plan their work to go back again from the campus. You can see that this information is not given in the form of sentences. If we were to put it into sentences, you would probably find it very difficult to extract the specific information which you need. For instance, if I am going from Sikandrabad, I can simply run my hand or finger down the table to the place Sikandrabad and locate the bus number as well as the time of departure from Sikandrabad in order to suit my convenience and to catch the bus to reach the campus. So, we have demonstrated that non-verbal information is easy to handle, is easy to read, but it is very important also to read such information, because not only does it help us in our day-to-day life, it also helps us in reading our other study materials. As I said right at the beginning of this program, you will find that if you are able to read non-verbal texts well, if you practice reading non-verbal texts, you will be able to read the maps in your history books, you will be able to read the tables in your commerce books, you will probably be able to read all the other non-verbal texts that you come across in other disciplines as well, including the sciences, where you would probably have to look at diagrams, which I haven't specifically spoken about today, because you would have labels in the diagrams and you would have to look at the label and interpret the diagram that is given to you. So, what we have learned today is that non-verbal texts are important. Reading non-verbal texts is a special skill. It needs to be developed, and we should learn not only to look at, observe, interpret and read non-verbal texts, but we should also learn how to use them in our texts, in texts which we write, so that we can make our writing clearer and more descriptive. It can become more illustrative, it can become more attractive to the readers.
మన ఈ ఉన్నత విద్యా కార్యక్రమాలపై మీ సందేహాలను, సలహాలను, అభిప్రాయాలను మాకు తెలియచేయండి. చిరునామా: డైరెక్టర్, ఆడియో విజువల్ ప్రొడక్షన్ అండ్ రీసెర్చ్ సెంటర్, డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ, ప్రొఫెసర్ జి రామ్రెడ్డి మార్గ్, రోడ్ నంబర్ 46, జూబ్లీ హిల్స్, హైదరాబాద్ 500033.